Hello and welcome to the Nitty Gritty. Shout out to the good folks at Beyond the Big Ten. I am Jon Sauber of the Center Daily Times. He is Penn State men's basketball legend Tim Frazier. Tim, how you doing? It's been a minute.
Man, it's been a while, John. How are you? I'm good, man.
It's been a long while. There's been a lot going on with Penn State basketball too. This is it's a little weird, right? This is year 5 for me covering the program now, so I feel like the seasoned vet at this point. Like I've been doing this forever. And this is, I think, the 4th head coach that I'm covering now, right? It started out as Pat Chambers, then they had an interim head coach, then it's Mike Rhoades, and now here we are. We're at the Mike Rhoades era already.
Yeah, you feeling like a vet, man. I'm feeling like I've literally been out of college for 10 years now. I'm like, where did the years go?
Yeah, man.
I'm feeling like an old head.
I was gonna say 10 years is. Listen, you've made it for yourself though, right? All that NBA money, all that overseas. It's
worked out.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's worked out a little bit better than me, who is still sitting here in Pleasant Gap. But no, it is different around here, right? Like it's a new era. We went from kind of the beautiful game stuff with Micah Shrewsbury, all of the motion offense and everything, and now you get this offense that is the goal is, I think, to be similar, but defensively it's some stuff honestly that I think you'd excel in, right? Like you would have excelled in when you were here. All of that ball pressure, generating turnovers, everything like that. Does it is it kind of like they're after your heart doing this, right? Going to this kind of defense where you're up in the other guy's jersey a little bit?
It's funny because you've seen this, from the VCU and just like the full court pressure and everything from, I think, what was it? I want to say, was it Shaka Smart?
It was when Shaka was there. Mike was one of his assistants there.
Right, exactly. So you've seen that, and even when I was in college playing, like you noticed that. He's like, damn, these dudes picking up full court the whole game, man. That's got to be tiring. I like in my mind, I'm thinking like they must just run suicides all day just to stay in shape. You know what I mean? Especially like during outside of class, they just out there just running just to stay in shape. So to see it now at firsthand with the Penn State basketball and how Coach Rhoades is implementing that, like honestly, I'm excited to see how to translate. Like I know it translated there, but can it translate in the Big Ten? And I think it can, because I think it's something new that the Big Ten teams aren't accustomed to or sure about. Just like last year with Micah with the, hey, we're going to shoot more threes and twos than you guys.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, right? Like that's probably the best place to start with all this too, right? Is it's a new style that the Big Ten's not used to, and how quickly can it work, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is a conference that plays how it plays. You know what I mean? Like there's not many places where you're still getting 2 bigs on the court, but there are plenty in the Big Ten that'll still try to do it. That'll try and beat you up with physicality. We know all about the officiating. You especially know all about the officiating. It's different. Like you just get away with more contact. It's physical. And now you're bringing in this style of play where it's like, okay, we're going to go be physical. We're going to go get in their jerseys. We're going to make it difficult. We're going to cut off passing lanes. And like you said, like it's just different. It's not something that these teams have seen before. And that's what makes me think it can work. Because, I mean, you can speak to this. Like, what's it kind of like to prepare for something that maybe you only see once a year, right? Like in football, I compare it to like when like Navy runs out there with a triple option or something. You got like 12 or 11 big dudes out there and you can't defend them. What's that like prepping for that in the lead up to one of those games?
Honestly, I think in colleges, it's going to be different because you're playing 2 games a week. Like you said, you can be playing from Wisconsin, very slow, place. At least when I was playing, that they were very slow place, and then from there,
still are.
You jump from Wisconsin and jump to Penn State, where hey, we're gonna pick you up full court, pressure you, put you in the turnovers, make you shoot the ball fast. Like, so I think it's gonna be like that's why I think this will work for in a lot of some circumstances and get some wins that guys don't think that Penn State will get because of that whole situation about being able to change what the teams are used to, right? Because that's something you have to prepare for. You have to prepare for. I remember when I was playing, and you have to prepare for how Michigan State, how their point guards, they would catch the balls as fast as they can and they would cross the court. That was something that Izzo always had. So it was always like, hey, when we shoot, we got to get all the way back as fast as we can. So now we're looking at this now because Coach Rhoades has those guys. As soon as the shot goes up, pick your man up full court, even before you even get back. It doesn't matter, all 5. So it literally, the pressure is on for them to get the rebound, turn around, and figure out where I'm going to go with the ball. So they're going to sneak up. They're going to win some games for sure. The games that I don't think they're going to win, I think it's going to be based on schedule and preparation. But it is hard to be able to say, hey, teaching college guys, some guys that are, freshmen, sophomores, to say, hey, we're going to go from this style of play and jump into some, the fast pace where everything has to be like this on point. You got to be thinking like this.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like with those conference games, it makes me think they're going to pick up some games, like you said, that they shouldn't, or that you think they shouldn't. But in non-conference, like when these teams aren't as good, right? Like we've seen so far that they beat Delaware State, they beat Lehigh. It's one of those things where if you don't have enough ball handling, they're just going to suffocate these teams, right?
Yeah.
Like they just don't have a chance because the ball pressure is something they're not used to, the athleticism is something they're not used to, and you combine those things, they kind of don't have a chance, right? Like it's like they're kind of hopeless. Now, early on, it wasn't necessarily perfect, right? For Penn State, it's one of those things that Delaware State game. It was funny. I think they had forced 17 turnovers in the first half, and that was more than they had at any point last year in a full game. They'd also turned it over 14 times in the first half, and that was more than they had last year at any time in any game. And it's one of those things like that's full game numbers compared to the first half of the Mike Rhoades era, and I think that's kind of it, though, right? This is just going to be different. And I think it's going to be a lot to get used to, and it's going to be one of those adjustments where, like you said, you light it up from deep, and now it's all about that defense.
And for sure, like the faster you play, and man, you don't want turnovers, but turnovers are going to come. The faster you play, especially with guys, they're going to be going 100 miles an hour and I think it's going to benefit, especially with these earlier games. Like they aren't as blowouts as we would expect them to be. But I look at this team and I look at Coach Rhoades and his system as like a boxer. So a boxer that's going to be in the best shape. That's when they win the best rounds, those championship rounds. Those are the rounds where. So when it comes to that last 10 minutes of the second half, or or to be able to win those games, that's where they're going to pull away the most because they're going to be in the best shape. And can these teams still put the pressure on the opposing team? Still put the pressure, still be in shape to be able to do that for a whole 40 minutes.
Well, that's the thing. Like you mentioned, like they just running suicides when they're not in class, right? Like that's other teams just aren't going to be able to get ready for that quick. It's just like the conditioning of just being able to run like that it's kind of impossible, and that's why we saw at Delaware State it happened like that. Lehigh was a little slow for Penn State, but it ended up happening like that they just couldn't handle it that long. But you're right. It's a boxer that's going to win those late rounds, right? They may just feel you out for the first 6 rounds, but those last 6 are going to be theirs, 10 times out of 10. But it is going to be. It's not just different from that though. It's like this is a whole new team, right? We went from seeing the Andrew Funks, the Jalen Pickett's, the Seth Lundys, the Miles Dredds, and those guys. Miles Dredd's still around, by the way, doing some color commentary on the broadcast. It was nice to see Miles doing that those first 2 games. But yeah, like this is 10 new guys this year. Only 3 guys coming back. Kanye Clary, Jameel Brown, Demetrius Lilly. But this is there's a mix of VCU guys. There's a mix of random transfers from other places. There's a mix of there's Braji Gudmundsson, who's from Iceland, coming over right as a freshman. So they went everywhere to find these guys to build this.
Props to you for that name, for that.
Listen, that's part of the job, right? That's the gig. Like I got to know how to say it, and I'm not going to admit how long I spent trying to figure out how to say it, but there was some time. I put the reps in to get that one down. But this is a whole new team, and so you're not just bringing a new system in, you're bringing a new system in for a whole new set of guys. Yeah. And so it's like when you have all of that pressure early and all of that, you mentioned like you're going to have more turnovers when you're up tempo. You're going to have even more when these guys haven't played together yet. So like these first, those first 2 games, we'll probably see it over the next 4 too, where it's like, like you can see what it's supposed to look like, but it's just not there yet. And like, I'm curious, how long do you think it's going to take to get into this rhythm where they're in the system and they know the system, right? Like, did you ever have to make that adjustment when you were playing?
I think when Pat came, after the Chellis era, when Pat came, and then we kind of just, those 6 seniors left. So it was kind of like everybody was new. So the young guys had to step up, be able to play. Myself had to change. But I think where it counts, right? Obviously non-conference is huge. But you don't want to take any knockdowns in a non-conference. But what matters the most is the Big Ten, and it's the tournament play. You know what I'm saying? Big Ten, and then get to the Big Ten tournament. So I give the guys until once Big Ten comes around, and then you have those first couple games too, because that's a different level of basketball. It's obviously the top conference in the league. I mean, in the nation every year, one or two. So, but I treat the non-conference games as exhibitions, not even though they count, but at the end of the day, it's to prepare you for Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan. Prepare you for the real test where it really counts.
Well, that's the thing too. Like they got 4 that they can kind of figure it out, right? Those first 2 that they played, they're going to have St. Francis and Morehead State, but then they're going down. They're playing Texas A&M, who they beat in the tournament last year, who's number 13 in the country right now. Like that's your 5th game of the year in a new era. That is not easy. And so I'll be curious to see, when they get to that point in time, like, all right, you had 4 games. Like, are you ready for it? Like, are you ready to put it all in? Because we mentioned some of the new guys, like.
Yeah,
they have 2 guys from VCU too that help blend that culture too. So it's like it's this thing where it's a blending it all together at the exact same time.
And even the A&M game, I give it like you said, 15 in the country. Man, I think they got one of the top guards in the country over there too. And you have, you're playing with house money. Obviously new era, new coach, new players. Like this year is really just playing with house money. I hate to just say that, but at the end of the day, like you want the team to be the best they can, and obviously shoot for the stars is what they want to, in the wins. And I believe they can do that because this style of play is just different, and it's going to take these teams to adjust to that. It's going to be tough for them to do that. So you go down to A&M and you be able to focus on that and just shoot for the stars. You playing like you had these first 4 games, but at the end of the day, that doesn't decide your season because that is a good team, and all you got to do is stick around. And like I said, I believe. Like the motto for every game, especially going into big games, is hey, just keep it close to the 4th, to the end, and then take away and like we're gonna be the best shaped team, play the hardest, pick you up full court no matter what. So
I think that A&M test is going to be a good one too to figure out. I mean, you said it, like this is kind of a year where you're learning about the team, right? You're not expecting it to be as good as last year's, but it's a good test to figure out how close it was because you mentioned A&M. Wade Taylor is still really good as their lead guard, right? Like they're still got a bunch of good players down there, still running that same system with Buzz Williams. Like they've got a chance to be one of the 5 to 10 best teams in the country this year. And now you get to kind of find out how you match up with yourself from last year if you're Penn State, right? Like this is the perfect test to figure out how far you've come and how far you can get into it that quick.
Yeah, but even John, can we really compare the teams from last year to this year? Like,
I mean, you kind of have to.
I think
that's. Like
I know you have to, but it's just tough, man. In this type of situation,
for sure.
That's tough to say because it's literally black and white. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Up and down as far as the teams and the coach and players. Like I can't. You know what I mean? Last year's team is built with a bunch of seniors and 5th-year guys, and you know what I mean. Coach had been there for 3 years. Now we talking about new guys, a couple of young guys as well. So I think it's hard to compare them. But at the end of the day, that's the only thing you can't go by is last year. Hey, They made it to the NCAA tournament, so that's the goal. You know what I mean? Is to make it now, get past the second round, which I think can be done. I don't know if it's done this year, but I think it can be done.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like and we've talked about this extensively, right? We talked about it a bunch last year with the transfer portal. Yeah. When you're a new coach, those expectations, like it gets hot quick, right? Like it's not
with the transfer for sure.
Yeah, it's not like you get 3 or 4 years anymore to hit your goals. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, year 1, like you kind of expect it, but like by year 2, you kind of got to be humming because at that point you got how many guys that you brought in from the portal. It's not just about freshmen and everything. And we mentioned the guys from VCU, like Ace Baldwin was the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year last year. He's the Atlantic 10 Defensive Player of the Year. That's not a guy that's coming in expecting to lose, right? Like he wants to win. He won last year at VCU. He's won most of his career at VCU. But he is a menace, man. Like there are not a ton of guards that you can compare to him, right? That you see that often because he's like small, right? Like he's like I say small relatively, like he's like an inch shorter than me. He's not that small, but like he's a menace though. He's the ultimate like get in your jersey, get steals kind of guy. Like force the game that way. And now he's got to be the leader too. Like this is a whole new team, and you're asking him to come in right away because he's only got this year and next year left. Like this isn't the usual like bringing the freshmen, whatever, all that stuff. This guy has this year and next year to figure it out, and I'm betting he's not wanting to miss the NCAA tournament both those years, and that's what makes it tough now, right? Like those expectations go up quick.
Yeah, of course not. And you want to do that's everybody's goal. Every player is to make the NCAA tournament, especially now we talk about AC only has 2 years. He's coming from winning, so all he knows is from his mind is like, hey, we win because I was able to talk to him in the Big Ten Media Day, and all they talk about is man, all we do is win. Also, we coming over here to shake things up and win, and that's what you want from a player, to not come in and say, hey, I'm coming to the Big Ten. I got these big names. None of that stuff really matters. He's coming in. he's fighting just like he thinks it, just like he did last year. He believes that this team is going to win, and they all do. And Coach Rhoades, they did a good job of hitting the portal. They were able to bring guys in. He brought the guys from VCO. He was able to get Puff Johnson from North Carolina as well, like some others. And so he's with the portal, he's able to just he's hitting singles. You know what I mean? He's doing a couple of doubles right now. So like he's already started to create what he wants here at Penn State and what he expects is going to help him win.
When you mentioned Puff, and like he hasn't made his season debut yet, he's still working back through an injury, but like he's one of those guys, like him and Ace, you mentioned like hitting doubles. It's like there's upside for those guys to beat home runs, like depending if it all breaks right. Another guy from North Carolina though, DeMarco Dunn, a guy that was a high-end 4-star guy, you know what I mean? All the athleticism in the world. They keep talking about like empowering him with the ball in his hands and trying to get him going in that sense, and giving him the role that he didn't have at North Carolina to get him going. So like there's talent, right? Like there's real talent here. This is not a Penn State team that's like a bunch of guys that it's the first year like where you're kind of worried about how this is going to come together because you don't know if they can even play at the level. It's more about everyone can play at the level. It's like, but can they do it together and can they do it in this system? But if you had to pick like one thing heading into this year that's going to dictate everything for this team and this program, like what would it be, and like what does that kind of look like to you?
I think it's something that's already kind of started. You mentioned about Puff being out. I think it's health. I think that's something that dictates everybody's season. You know what I mean?
Right.
You pray that there's no injuries and that everybody's full go, and then you're able to grow together. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, when guys are out, you have to bring new guys in, and then it waits for them to get accustomed. Now we got to work this guy in. And so the biggest thing is for everybody to try to be as healthy as they can be. And then they're able to build those blocks together each game. Use these non-conference games together. Be able to play together. See how Ace is able to play with Puff and how, Kanye Clary as well. All those guys. And they're all playing together. So you're able to find your rotations like, hey, this is you want to find, as a coach, I'm not a coach, but I would believe so that you want to find your rotation as early as possible. Obviously, some things are going to happen. Things are going to change. Guys are going to come out and get in slumps, and you might make a change. Or certain situations in games when you play Purdue, you play big fella, you might have to do something a little different. But you want to be able to find your rotation as soon as possible, and have guys settle in and know exactly what. Hey, this is the amount of minutes I'm going to play. This is where I'm going to play. This is what the team needs. And so I think health is my biggest thing that I think to be able to help this season be able to move as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, and I think, specifically with Puff's health, right? Like not knowing, they still don't know when he's going to make that debut. He's still ramping up and everything. But even like to go off that, like it's the health to make sure you mentioned like him and Ace, how they play together and everything. To me, it's a lot of how those two guys, especially like Puff and Ace, and to some extent DeMarco Dunn, kind of play together with Jameel Brown and Kanye Clary, right? Because those are the two guards that came back from last year, right? Like those are the two guys, along with Demetrius Lilly, who's a big man, who's a backup behind Qudus Wahab right now. But like those two guys at the top are like, okay, Jameel and Kanye, like this is the year that they get to maybe take the step forward after not having a huge role last year. And we saw it in the first game, like Jameel Brown was lighting it up from deep. He was hitting seemingly everything. Like he looked great. Like Kanye's been, I think, the leading scorer both games so far. And looks like and he's getting to the rim at will. And you talk about like kind of undersized guards, like Ace is the perfect guy for him to learn off of, right? Because they're both that kind of quick, that kind of fast, trying to get to the rim, trying to create for others by getting the defense to collapse down around him. And then it's just about like getting him to make those right plays, right? Like knowing when to kick it, knowing when like, hey, like I get it. Like you want to be aggressive and get to the rim, but sometimes you mentioned Zach Edey at Purdue. Like sometimes that guy's 7'4", and sometimes that ball's got to come out, right? Like, and so it can be tough to learn that when you're a young guy like that. So I think Ace is going to help him a ton with that. It's gonna help him and Jameel take that next step, because at the end of the day, like, this is about culture too, and building culture for Mike Rhoades, and it's Ace and Nick Kern Jr. who are like the VCU guys who know his culture. But they also got to blend it with the Penn State culture that Jameel and Kanye know well.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, and it's like I'm curious to see how that plays out specifically, because you probably never dealt with this because the portal wasn't a thing when you were playing, but like that's like a weird collision of those kind of cultures, and like how you bring in, okay, these guys did it a certain way under Micah Shrewsbury, right, for a year, and this is exactly how they played. But those two dudes did it a certain way under Mike Rhoades for years, and Mike Rhoades has been doing it that way for years. Mm-hmm. And so trying to bring that together, like, how do you blend guys that like don't know each other at all and have these like things that are so far away from each other? You know what I mean? How they played and everything. How do you bring that together in year one?
It's tough, but I think that the best thing is that the guys they all have the same goal, and the goal is to win. The goal is to make the Big Ten tournament. Make the NCAA tournament, make noise in the Big Ten tournament, and to win as many games as possible. And I heard it from the four guys that went to Big Ten Media Day. All they talk about was like, man, we want to make some noise. Like we're not here just to be here. We're here to make some noise. So I think that gel is already starting, and I would attribute that to Mike, Coach Rhoades, and how he's already positioned himself, because at the end of the day, those guys could have left from Penn State. So he had to have some type of talks with them to tell them, hey, this is what we got. This is the way I play. This is the style I'm bringing. and I think you would fit perfectly with that. So I think that's how it's going to go as far as that. And at the end of the day, what you make sacrifices, and, obviously the Micah area was, it did what it did, took the team to the tournament. It should have been twice. Obviously whatever happened. But from there is, you go from there. You just push them together and just figure out like what's the best way to be able to join these guys together to be able to compete and get to the ultimate goal of making the tournament.
Oh, and two, it's like part of that, like making sure like Kanye and Jamil and all those other guys know that like, hey, Ace and Nick don't get like special treatment, right? You know what I mean? Making sure like that. And the funny thing is, like, game 2, Ace doesn't start, and I asked Mike about it after the game, and he smiled and said it was a coach's decision. I asked him to elaborate, and he said nope. And I was like, all right. Like, so clearly, like, whatever happened there, like, there is a standard that all of these guys are held to. Ace, A10 player of the year, defensive player of the year, guy who knows Mike Rhoades better than anyone there. Even he is susceptible to those coaches' decisions, right? Whatever that may be, the reason that he didn't start that game. We asked Ace about it too, and Ace chuckled when we asked him about it. He ended up playing like 30-some minutes, and he was great in that game. But like, it's about making sure these guys know too, like, hey, no one's like, they're not playing favorites here. They're going to play the best guys no matter what. You got your shot to get it as much as any other guy. But I think it's going to be interesting, right? Like, because we talked about the tournament, and it's different at Penn State, where the expectation isn't the NCAA tournament every year, I think, and that's it's been the case like that for a long time. And so the goals are always different from the outside than the inside. You're right, all those guys, they want to make the NCAA tournament this year. Period. End of story. Nothing else to it. But right now, like, what do you think this team can do, and what do you think they can get to in year one?
I think it's still for me, it's too early to tell. Obviously I want to say the NCAA tournament, but I think it's going to be tough. But like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, I think they're going to steal some games. I think it's just how good they can be when Big Ten tournament play comes around. I think the NCAA tournament might be tough. I don't know like the strength of schedule as far as all that's going to play, and if they're going to win enough games, because the Big Ten is still loaded again, even more. But there have been guys, I think Michigan State has already dropped a game.
Yep.
All right, so they're gonna be losses, and teams are gonna lose, and obviously the Big Ten, they just beat up on each other the whole all season long. So like I wouldn't be passive if I thought they would make the NIT. Like I think that's an achievable goal. I think that's an NIT is an achievable goal. I think that should be the floor. Obviously you want to go be higher than that, but I think right now, if we're talking in the locker room, obviously we talking side by side, hey, NCAA tournament is where we want to be, but we got to make the NIT. And that's basically saying, hey, we're one of those two teams right outside the Big Ten tournament. I mean, the one outside of the Big Ten that didn't make it.
And that's what, like,
I don't know. I might be swinging for the fences with that. I just think that this style of play is something that the Big Ten hasn't seen, and I just think
that's
that,
the thing we're going to find out.
Yeah,
like it's like, and I think you're right. I tend to, because this is something I think about a lot, right? Covering the team, it's like trying to figure out what this team is, what it's going to look like, and I think it's going to be a matter of, I think you're right. I think they're going to catch teams, but are they going to get caught too many times, right? Like, are they going to get caught in those games where they turn the ball over too much and it doesn't go the other way? You know what I'm saying?
But I do think that they can't. I'm sorry to cut you off, John, but can they hit enough threes? Like as we speak last year, to be able for Penn State to win those games last year, they had to make those guys had to shoot phenomenal from the three. So can this team make enough threes that hey, when they're not getting the turnovers and not getting the layups, can the threes separate them to keep them in the game? I think that's going to be the biggest question. Can they make enough threes to be able to stay in the game when they're not turning the teams over?
Well, and that's the funny thing you mentioned that, because Mike Rhoades got asked about it. I think it was after the Lehigh game, like what is this team right now that maybe you didn't expect? And he said like he thought they'd be shooting it better. And so I'll be curious to see if that gets better, because I do think they need that to hit that goal. I think the NIT is a good goal though, right? Like I think it's at the point where when you can turn it over this quick, when you can get the roster rolling this quick, you should be able to make the NIT at least fairly consistently. It shouldn't be that much of a stretch, especially like they put in new rules. I haven't read them all completely because it's a lot. But like where basically Power 5 schools, like Big Ten type schools, they're going to be more big schools that get in than small schools. Like they don't have the automatic small school bids anymore, and so there will be more chances. Yeah, there will be more chances even for Penn State to get in. So I think you're looking at a ceiling of like probably like 10th in the Big Ten, which gets you on the bubble. I think that gives you a chance to make the NCAA tournament. But if you get to 10th, you're in the NIT. If you get to 11th, you're probably in the NIT. And I think, honestly, like I know I said, like the portal makes it easier and everything. The portal makes it so you can turn it around quicker. It's just a lot to ask to do it in year one, right? Like it's so much to ask, especially when Mike Rhoades hasn't, like for as long as he's been head coach, it's been at Rice, it's been at VCU, hasn't been in the Big Ten. So this is kind of new for him too. He's still learning a lot of this. So I think a fair expectation is making the NIT, and if they get around 500, I think that's fine, right? Like if you get to 500 this year, you're competitive in every game in the Big Ten. You're not getting your doors blown off. More importantly, though, you got to prove the style works, right? You got to prove that you can play like this in the Big Ten. If that's not the case, then things change dramatically. But I do think that this is going to end up working, and I know I keep going back to it, but there's going to be a team, right? There's going to be a team at the top of the conference, maybe. Not Purdue, but it's one of the other teams near the top that just aren't ready to get pressed that much, and suddenly you're going to lose a game that you didn't expect to lose.
Yeah, if you look at it now, like you talk about, we mentioned big fella from Purdue, Zach Edey. He's never been somebody picking him up full court. Can you imagine him pick with that speed and that that size, being able is he in that best of shape to be able to run up and down a court like that as much as possible? And and sometimes that works. That'll work in Penn State favor because it's like, hey, we can't keep them on the court because those guys just keep running. So we got to take him out as much as possible, but at the end of the day, do we have somebody that can guard him on the other end? I think we got enough young guys to be able to bang him, and give him a run for his money. Yeah, are we going to stop him completely? But we give him enough run for his money to, hey, man, we're going to tire you out as long as possible because you know what, you got to run it. You got to sprint back on the other end.
And that's the thing. Like you go get Qudus Wahab, who was at Maryland, who was at Georgetown. He's in year 5. Like he's a big dude himself. I think he had 18 rebounds the other night. Like he's going to be able to hang in there. It's like, but it's that thing where maybe you take him out a little bit too, go super small, and like you said, just make him run.
Just run him.
But yeah, I think either way though, this is going to be like one of the most interesting years I think in recent Penn State basketball history, at least, because I think we kind of knew. You and I said it last year. We called it early, right? Like we said that team was going to make the NCAA tournament. Could even make some noise when they got there. And I've told anyone who would listen, like if they had gotten back past Texas, like there was a legitimate chance that they made the Final Four. Like that team was that good at that time. We see Pickett go early in the second round playing for the Denver Nuggets right now. Like Seth Lundy goes in the second round too. Like you just don't see that often, right? Like you are one of the like the few like you're one of the few guys who've done it like for this long at the high level that you have, right? And now there's 2 of those guys from last year's team that are hoping to be able to match the kind of thing that you've done with your career. So it's one of those things where it's like it's a lot because it's all of that happened last year and then it's all gone, right? Like everything left and like suddenly it's everything new. So I do think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think you and I are going to be talking about it every 2 weeks, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun too. You can always find us, of course, on Twitter as well. If you're looking to find Tim and I, Tim is TimFraze23 on Twitter. I am at Jon Sauber. Tim is doing his thing, recovering right now, but I'm sure going to be doing his thing again here soon on courts, as we all know. But you can find my stuff a little bit less exciting, but I like to think still good. Writing about Penn State football and men's basketball at the Center Daily Times. We're going to be doing this all season though, and we're happy to be back and keep you in the loop. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great day.